Welcome in to the PFN Bengals Podcast. It's Cutdown Day. Bengals and every other team in the NFL are making a bunch of transactions today, finalizing their 53-man rosters. We've got the man on the scene, Mr. Jay Morrison in Cincinnati. How you doing today, Jay?
Great, Dallas. How are you?
Doing good. I don't know, looking at the initial Bengals roster, that there are that many surprises that they, in terms of who they cut today, but there's certainly a lot to talk about. And I think we'll just go through the roster today and talk about each position and how the Bengals line up and what moves they could consider over the next days, the waiver period processes, and any free agents they might think about signing. Let's start with quarterback. Obviously, Joe Burrow, we think he's going to be back for week one, but that backup quarterback position is still very important. Jake Browning made his way onto the roster with a really good preseason performance, or at least better than Trevor Siemian. I don't know, really good might be going too far, but he was better than Trevor Siemian. But do you think they're set there? Are they set with Browning? Are they going to look at some of these guys that got cut today, or look at the free agent market and maybe consider a different option than Jake Browning?
Yeah, I mean, Zach Taylor said that he feels really good about Jake Browning as the number 2 quarterback, but that's based on what they have. I mean, it's either him or Reed Sinnett, and it's that they're looking at the waiver wire. I would be stunned if they don't add a quarterback tomorrow, whether it be on the 53-man roster or sign a veteran to the practice squad, whatever way they go about it. Wait till waivers claim and then add a guy to the practice squad. It's just, I don't know, that I talked to Trevor Siemian. He said that he told them he's not interested in coming back on the practice squad. So that's out. That is not going to happen. So yeah, right now it's Reed Sinnett is the third guy, and it's Jake Browning. He came on, he showed improvement, which is what you want to see. But it was 12 drives, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. So there's still that doubt. I mean, he's never played an NFL game, a real game. He's only played in the preseason. And there's, man, it's out there. I mean, I know Bengal fans don't want to hear it, but the chance of a calf strain reoccurring is, I don't know if significance is the right word, but it's definitely a possibility.
It's a possibility, yeah.
It's something that you may, and even if it's not, I mean, guys get dinged, and we've talked about this before. Who knows when a concussion comes up and a guy, he's okay, but he just has to leave the game for the rest of that game. I mean, how comfortable do you really feel with Jake Browning if that's the case? So there's guys out there that I think they will try to bring in here and at least start a new competition for that job and see if they can beat out Jake.
Yeah, I thought Browning, the thing that impressed me the most was his rushing ability and just his escapability, right? And I think if you're going to look for a backup who's maybe unproven, then finding a guy who can maybe make a couple things happen is not the worst idea. So I get kind of where they're going with Browning, but yeah, there were some interesting names like cut over the past few days. Will Grier played really, really well in the Cowboys' final preseason game. Bailey Zappi just got cut from the Patriots, which I couldn't believe. I mean, he was their backup quarterback all year last year. Colt McCoy got cut, which was surprising, in Arizona. PJ Walker got cut from the Bears. There are guys out there who have started NFL games who the Bengals could consider if they want to upgrade. But whether they do or not, I mean, we'll just have to wait and see. I think at this point, the question is it going to be someone they add to the 53, or is it going to be someone they put on the practice squad? And we'll just have to wait and see how that goes. I think at running back,
Dallas, I didn't see because I was so busy writing after the cuts. Did San Francisco cut Brandon Allen? I have not seen that yet.
You know what? I don't know. I'm not sure.
That's another name that's a possibility. And then you mentioned Grier. I mean, what a tough situation. He knows he's going to get cut, and they still stick him in there, and he plays. I think that'll go a long way. That'll be attractive to some teams that are going to be looking to add.
Definitely. So Brandon Allen did make the 49ers roster. So
wow.
After they traded Trey Lance, they did decide to keep him on as their third quarterback. So no longer an option for the Bengals. So he's out. Let's move to running back. I think running back was kind of interesting too. They ended up keeping 4: Joe Mixon, Travion Williams, Chase Brown, Chris Evans. I think Travion Williams is kind of the wild card here. He hasn't been practicing at all. He's been injured. As you wrote, he's supposed to be back in practice soon. But just from my opinion, I think it was a little surprising to keep him on the roster. I thought they maybe could have put him on IR. I thought he's a vested veteran. He doesn't have to go through waivers. I thought they could have cut him maybe to make a spot for someone who has to go on injured reserve at a different position and then try and bring him back later. That's not what they did. I think they feel pretty comfortable with him. And, Chase Brown and Chris Evans have both played really well in the preseason, and they've impressed me. But Travion Williams has been here. I mean, I think he's still probably in contention to earn some sort of role. I guess that depends on when he comes back to practice, though.
If you ask me, he's the leading candidate to be the third down. He's the leading guy to be the P Ryan. The whole thing was, can he be healthy in time? And Zach did say they were going to integrate him back into practice this week.
Yeah.
Then you have the real practice week for the Browns coming up next week. I think there's more trust there. It felt like Chris Evans had grabbed that job, but it didn't sound that way from Zach today. And, I wrote about it in my piece too. It was really interesting after the game Saturday when Zach was asked about Chase Brown's performance, and he said when he had the ball in his hands, he was really good. He's not there. That's not a knock on him. It's not to say he's never going to be good in pass pro, but he is a rookie. He's still learning, and he's not there yet. And I don't think that's going to be his role right away. Maybe at some point this year, maybe next year. So it's coming down to Travion Williams and Chris Evans, and maybe that's another position where we see them go out and get a veteran who's been in that role before. It's we're recording this so quick after cuts. I haven't really had a chance to scour the waiver wire to see what's available out there, but that's another position where I think you could see a move be made. But if you ask me, the four that are there right now, Travion's the leader to win that third down back job.
And we've talked about it before. We know there are free agents like Kareem Hunt and Leonard Fournette still out there, in addition to the guys who got waived today. So a lot of options out there if the Bengals want to go somewhere else. Elsewhere on offense, wide receiver, they kept the top 6 guys we thought they would do, but they did cut Stanley Morgan. I mean, a little bit of a surprise. He's been here. He's been a special teams ace. I don't know if maybe that's a guy they think they could get back if they do have to place someone else on injured reserve, or if they think they could get him onto the practice squad. But Andre Yoshivas and Charlie Jones just made a really difficult decision. I don't think they were ever going to cut Charlie Jones as a 4th-round pick, but Yoshivas really played his way onto the roster. He really impressed me during the preseason with his athleticism, some of the back shoulder catches he was able to make. I don't know if he's going to have a role this season, but there was no way the Bengals could cut him. So Stanley Morgan it's just kind of a numbers game. He didn't make it. It wouldn't surprise me if he's back on the roster at some point this year, but he's not here now.
Yeah, it's a gamble because I do think they really would like to keep him around. And I know we're kind of going position by position here, but we still don't know about Joseph Osai. And, they're looking for more information there. Maybe he's the guy they have to put on IR that creates a spot. I don't know that Deontay Smith left the game with a shoulder injury, but it sounds like that was just a sprain and he's going to be okay. So what do they do there? Because it's easy to say, okay, yeah, well, just have a handshake deal with Stanley Morgan and bring him back on the practice squad and just elevate him on game days to play special teams. You can do that 3 times. That's it. Then he's got to be on the 53. So then you're just kind of rolling the dice where, I think it is a safe bet that someone at some point is going to go on IR before week 4. But just the whole fact of cutting him and probably a handshake kind of deal where, don't go anywhere else. But if another team comes in with a great offer to sign him, it's hard to say no to that and go for a bigger opportunity somewhere else. But you've got the lure of a good team and Joe Burrow and the familiarity and all that. So I would not be surprised, but it to see him back. But it is a gamble to let a guy like that go.
It definitely is, and I think it's a gamble at tight end too, where they let go of Tanner Hudson. Another guy I thought that was really impressive during the preseason, and I don't want to put too much weight on preseason performance. We can't just say someone played well in the 3rd week of the preseason and he's going to be an immediate star. But Tanner Hudson, I think, showed that he could have been a viable backup as a receiving tight end at least, which is something I don't think Drew Sample or Mitchell Wilcox necessarily has that upside. So I was a little surprised that they put him on waivers too. I thought they could maybe make room for him even at the expense of someone like Wilcox, but I think probably that familiarity they have with Wilcox now that he's back from the injured list, I think that probably won out.
Yeah, and that can't sit well with Tanner Hudson. I don't want to put words in his mouth. I haven't talked to him, but he's been here this whole time. Played great in the preseason, came back from a concussion and played well. And then Mitch Wilcox comes in, practices twice, plays 17 snaps in the game, and he wins the job over him. So I don't know that there was a handshake deal with Tanner Hudson to stick around. I think we've seen the last of him. But that's another position where, waiver wire. And maybe that's why a guy like Trey Hill on the offensive line. They kept 10. I didn't think
Yeah.
they would keep him. Maybe they kept him around for that reason, to have somebody to cut
Mm.
if they win a waiver claim. So it's all, the roster gymnastics are just
Yeah.
starting. But yeah, Tanner Hudson deserved to make this team, but I understand why they felt more comfortable with Mitch Wilcox.
And we're calling this the final roster. It's anything
No.
but the final roster. It's
No.
they claimed 3 players last year. I wouldn't be
Mhm.
surprised if they claimed somebody this, and all 3 made the team. I wouldn't be surprised if they claimed somebody this year. I think there will be more movement. Speaking of Trey Hill, he did make the team. They kept 10 offensive linemen. That surprised me. I didn't think Trey Hill was going to make this team. I don't think he was very impressive in the preseason. He clearly has been usurped by Max Sharping as the top interior backup offensive lineman. I'm surprised he made the team. I guess knowing Dante Smith is going to be okay, I think that makes me think that, like you just said, Trey Hill could be a guy that they maybe cut in the next couple of days if Dante Smith is okay. But I was very surprised Trey Hill made the roster. I don't know what you think about that. I just don't think he was that good this offseason.
No, and he has no tape to
No.
speak of. He had a couple of years ago. He got. I remember he played in the Detroit game and did not look good at all. And
Yeah.
so from that standpoint, that's the surprise, because you don't think, no one, if they did cut him, they would have been easily got him back on the practice squad if they wanted to continue to develop him. But I think that's what's happening there. I think is that he's the piece where if they win a waiver claim, he's the guy that'll be the cut to make room for whoever the waiver claim is on the 53. It doesn't have to be, I know a lot of people aren't up to the rules and everything. It doesn't have to be a position by position thing where if you claim a tight end, you have to cut a tight end. You can cut anybody you want.
Sure.
So I think that's what he is. I hate to say it. I hate to dehumanize a guy and call it, but he's a pawn right now.
Do you think, is Dante Smith still the top swing tackle? Which if Brown or Williams went down in the first couple weeks of the season, I'm just curious. I wonder if they would bring in Dante Smith or Jackson Carman first. Carman has just been so poor this offseason. He's obviously going to make the team because of the draft investment, but I do wonder where his standing is on this team after. I guess he looked better in the last preseason game, but just really disappointing. I'm curious as to what they think his role is this year.
Yeah, if I could give truth serum to Frank Pollock and Zach Taylor and even Brian Callahan, and I only got a few questions, that would be one of them, because you mentioned it, the draft capital, the potential, he has all the traits, but they hammer home the idea of consistency so much, and that's where he's lacking. He shows the flashes, and then he shows what the heck was that? Yep. So how much longer can they live with that? I still think that because of the athleticism and the traits that he would probably be the guy they would stick in there. But if it wasn't working, I would say they would have a quick hook. But maybe if he is your swing tackle, maybe Deontay Smith is not active again on game days, and then you're stuck if something like that happens. So I really think he's just they're both placeholders right now. Mm-hmm. Lael Collins is starting on PUP. He still counts against the salary cap, all that money. So they've committed to that. And I think that they're going to ride this out, see whenever he's healthy. When he is, then he'll be the guy to step in. And they're just keeping their fingers crossed that neither Orlando Brown or Jonah Williams go down before Lael Collins comes back.
We know the Bengals don't ever really make in-season trades, but Lael Collins is going to be kind of their version of a mid-season acquisition, I think, this year. And maybe he won't have to play. Let's hope he doesn't have to play. But man, what a great piece to add, I think, middle of the season if he can hopefully come back healthy later this year.
Yeah. He can play guard too.
Yeah, he's just such a valuable piece that I think a lot of contending teams would really like to have. Let's move on to the defensive side. They kept 10 defensive linemen. They kept Jay Tufele, who I think was probably a bubble guy, but he did make the roster. That means they didn't keep Raymond Johnson III, who, for my money, was maybe the most impressive, at least defensive player of the entire Bengals preseason. He made so many plays, showed up in every game. I thought the Bengals might try to get a spot for him, but they weren't able to find the room, which leads us to the question of Joseph Ossai. How serious is this injury? Is it going to be a situation where the Bengals have to place him on IR tomorrow? If you're not familiar with the NFL's roster rules, any player who a team wants to designate to return later in the season has to make the initial 53-man roster. So if the Bengals had placed Joseph Asai on injury reserve over the weekend, he would have been out for the entire season. He had to make the roster today. They can place him on IR tomorrow and add a new player in his place. We don't really know if that's what's going to happen or not. It sounds like the Bengals are still assessing his situation, but obviously a huge loss if he isn't able to play. And I think we'll obviously bring up some questions of why was Osai even in the third preseason game at all, right? I mean, I think that's probably a fair question to ask at this point.
It is, but then again, if you're gonna sit all 53 guys that you intend to keep, that only leaves you with 30, 35 to play in that game. So some guys have to play in that game, and they felt like he needed reps. Kelsey Conway from the Cincinnati Enquirer reported it's a high ankle sprain, so it doesn't sound like it's going to be anything long term. But that's what Zach was talking about. They're going to try to get some more information and see exactly where this is and how much time he might have to miss. You're right. Raymond Johnson looked great, but the thing, it's not just about who looks good. I mean, there's so many other pieces that go into this, and if he makes the 53, he's not dressing on game day.
Right.
So you're kind of wasting a spot there. I mean, you are rolling the dice because there's a good chance that guy gets claimed and you don't get him back on the practice squad because of how good he looked. But you drafted Myles Murphy for a reason. And yes, he hasn't really lit the world on fire yet in camp, but he's young, he's growing. You see it all the time. It's corners, quarterbacks, wide receivers. Those guys can come into the league and make an impact right away. Those interior guys, it's just a different breed of guy you're going against in terms of strength and expertise and technique and all that. So it takes some time, and they invested a first round pick in him. And so he's the guy that's going to be active on game day. And it's a tough break for Raymond Johnson. He deserved it. He played really well. That'll be one of the interesting things to see. It seems like every year we talk about this. Oh, they're so deep, and they could have 3-4 guys get claimed on waivers, and that just doesn't happen. There's not a lot of guys that actually do get claimed. I think Raymond Johnson will get claimed by somebody. There's too much of a need for edge rushers out there, and he has shown that he can do a lot. Not just rush the passer, but defend against the run and drop in coverage.
Very versatile, can play with his hand in the ground, can play stand up. I mean, I think he's a very versatile weapon. The thing about Osai that's interesting to me is, so say it is a high ankle sprain. That's typically like a 4 to 6 week injury, usually is what teams go on. Bengals bye is in week 7. I wonder if he's still recovering at that point. Do they just hold him out through the bye and say, hey, we'll come back and join us in week 8? I don't know. I mean, that's a long ways off. That'd be kind of a long injury, but I don't know. I think he's going to be a big loss because I was really banking on like a huge season from him this year. I was very impressed by him last year.
Yeah.
I thought he would play he's obviously not going to be a quote unquote starter, but he could play starters level snaps basically this year. I do wonder if Cam Sample is going to have to be the guy that steps up, because Myles Murphy he's a first round pick, but like you said, it might take him a little while. Cam Sample's been here. Cam Sample, I think, is a really underrated player, and he's going to have an opportunity now, at least, even if Osai doesn't go on IR. I would guess he's out for the first week or 2 at least. Mm-hmm. Cam Sample's going to have an opportunity, I think, to kind of solidify his presence on this defensive line and make himself known. So be curious to see how that goes. Were you surprised they kept 10 and they kept Jay Tufele? I know he's flashed during the preseason. I thought maybe Dominic Davis could make the roster over him, but they claimed Tufele off waivers last year. I think they like what they did, but were you surprised that he was able to kind of grab that last spot?
A little, but not too much, because it's not so much what he did in the preseason. It's what he did in big games last year.
Season.
He's just one of those guys that just does the dirty work and makes plays. And, it's, do you really need 3 nose tackle kind of guys that aren't really 3 techniques? Because you got Tupo too, those 2 guys backing up DJ Reader, but they think enough of Tufele to keep him around. And so I was a little surprised just from the numbers aspect, where it's like, that's one area that I don't know that you need another guy, especially with, as much as they can move Hubbard inside or Asai inside or
Yeah.
Sample inside. A lot of those edge guys can rush
Yeah.
from the inside as well too. So
Sure.
little surprise, but not overly.
I wonder if it's based even like on being in the AFC North with the Steelers and Browns and Ravens, three
Yeah,
teams that are going
absolutely.
to run the ball and pound the ball.
Mm.
Like, why not have an extra big body there in the middle? Um, Linebacker, I don't even think we need to talk about. We've
Nope.
kind of known how the five guys are
Rubber
going to
stamp.
be. Yes, we you've got that one right in your roster projection. I think everyone who covers the Bengals probably got that one right. Not a lot to talk about there. Um, Quarterback, a little bit to talk about. I don't think it was entirely surprising that DJ Ivy made the roster. He's made
Mm.
a lot of plays in the preseason. He's been very impressive throughout training camp. Looked like it was basically him kind of versus Michael Thomas in the secondary, and they kept DJ Ivy. That means Sidney Jones is not on the roster. That means Alan George is not on the roster. Whether those guys want to go in the practice squad or not, we'll have to see. But I think that you got to feel good about the Bengals' depth at cornerback. I mean, to have DJ Turner,
Mhm.
a second round pick as your cornerback four, to me, he has looked. I wouldn't be that alarmed if he had to go into the starting lineup. I really wouldn't. I think he's been that solid so far this summer that I really wouldn't be worried if he had to play. TGI, I'd be a little more worried. He's a rookie 7th round pick, but he'll probably see a lot of time on special teams if he's even active. So I think to get that type of depth and that type of youth in the secondary, at a position on the roster where Cheeto's probably not going to be here next year, Mike Hilton, who knows? He's getting up there in years. I think it's good that they're bringing in all this youth in the cornerback room because they're going to have to spend in other positions. It's good
Mhm.
that they're getting cheap in the secondary right now.
Yeah, and that's why I think you're going to see Alan George come back on the practice squad and maybe
Mm.
not Sidney Jones. I mean, not just the youth part of it. For people that don't know, Alan George, undrafted rookie free agent last year out of Vanderbilt, did make the 53.
Yep.
Then was one of those guys that went back to the practice squad when they claimed three guys. But
Yep.
you look back in training camp and Alan George flashed. He made some plays. He had some memorable moments last year and this year. And I can't say the same thing for Sidney Jones. And then plus
Yep.
Sidney Jones was injured that whole time with the hamstring injury. And, maybe they do bring both of them back on the practice squad. But I think Alan George is a much better bet to be back here as another guy they can kind of continue to develop. And, I don't think I don't know if you would feel comfortable putting him in a game if things got really bad with attrition at that position, but he's serviceable and he's got room to grow and he's very intelligent. So
Yeah.
those are the kind of guys that Lou Anarumo likes, where there's no blown assignments and he knows what to do, he knows where to be. So I think you're going to see him back.
I would agree. And we talked about Michael Thomas. He didn't make the roster, but as you've written, I think he wants to come back to the practice
Yeah.
squad. I think he probably will. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of interest in him around the league besides the Bengals. But I think the same thing is true of the safety room is true of the cornerback room, that they're very young, and I think they have a lot of upside. I mean, Nick Scott and Dax Hill are going to be in the starting lineup, but I wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Battle sees some time if they play three safety sets. Tyson Anderson will probably be mostly on special teams, but really like this 4-man group they have in the back end. And if they can have Thomas still in the locker room, even if he's not in the actual roster, I think you've got to feel good about this, even if it's not the level of where Jesse Bates and Von Bell were last year. I don't think any Bengals fans expected the safety room to,
No.
to be at that point, but I think that they have found a solution that's going to work for them this year.
Yeah, and it's kind of a parallel to Stanley Morgan, but not really, because if Stanley comes back on the practice squad, you absolutely want him on the 53 at some point so he can be a part of as many game days as possible on special teams. Mike Thomas was a valuable member of special teams, but not at the level that Stanley Morgan was. Mike
Mhm.
Thomas's value is his personality, his knowledge, his leadership, just what he means to those guys in the locker room, and just having him around, even if it is on the practice squad and not getting elevated on game days. That is the goal, to work him back to the 53-man roster at some way. That is his
Yeah.
goal, I should say. But there just may not. I mean, there's not a lot of teams that have five safeties, and for him to kind of get back on the 53 would probably involve an injury of some sort. So we'll just see how that plays out. But I fully expect him to be one of the 16 practice squad guys named tomorrow.
I agree with that as well. Special teams, not a bunch of surprises. Brad Robbins beat out Drew Chrisman. I think we all
Mhm.
expected that probably from the second Robbins was drafted. It's going to be the same special teams unit for the most part as there was last season. Um, What are your biggest questions on this roster? I guess now that we have the 53-man, at least initial roster set in place, I think for me, it's still got to be that backup quarterback position. I
Yeah.
think this is such a strong roster. We've talked about it already this year that there were no starting spots available on this depth chart. It's all backup spots. And I think the Bengals did a really good job of deciding who to keep in the majority of those spots. But if I had to have a concern, I think it's that backup quarterback spot. I think they'll probably still be looking at running back if there's anybody out there on the waiver wire. Beyond that, I don't see any other like obvious spots on this roster where they're going to have to be just desperate to find somebody. That's just not the state that this roster is in. They're going to be losing guys. I mean, we both remember years where the Bengals had such a bad roster that we wanted to declaim 10 guys and add new players to their roster. They're going to be losing guys this year. But I do think the quarterback and running back are two of the positions where they could still look to add. Is there anywhere else I'm forgetting? I don't know if there's anywhere else.
Tight end, I still
Tight end,
think, with just
okay.
keeping the 3 there. And yeah, I don't the quarterback thing. I mean, just think about it. If Burrow doesn't get hurt, then that's even fewer snaps for Browning
Yeah,
and Simeon. So maybe that's
right.
kind of a silver lining there, where they got a longer look to know that, or to make their decision whether they think he is capable
Yeah,
of being the guy if anything were to happen to Burrow. And I don't think, I'm not saying he never will be, but I just, right now, I just don't know how confident you could be having to go to him for a couple games if that's the case. So, and with so many other guys out there, it just makes too much sense to bring somebody in, whether it's off waivers and then making Trey Hill your cut piece, or
yeah.
bringing just a developmental guy in on the practice squad and letting him run the scout team and try to get better that way. I, Maybe even that might be too much to ask for a young guy like that to run the
Yeah,
scout team. That is an important position.
yeah,
People kind of discount that, and I think you would see Jake Browning be the scout team quarterback against the number 1 defense. But I just feel like they need to bring somebody else in to make it some sort of competition,
yeah.
ongoing competition.
Yes. So I think next week or tomorrow, sorry. The waiver period starts now and ends tomorrow. If you had to put, who do you think will be the guys who could get claimed? I think Raymond Johnson could definitely get claimed.
Hmm.
Um, I could see Tanner Hudson getting claimed, maybe, but that's only because it's so hard to find tight ends in the
Well,
NFL.
he's one of those guys that doesn't have to go through waivers as a vested veteran, so he
Oh,
can get
Hudson.
signed.
Hudson is a vested
Yeah,
veteran. Okay.
yeah, he can get signed right away.
Okay. So I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
So Raymond Johnson is one. Beyond that, I don't know. I don't know that I think a ton of guys
Mhm.
could get claimed from this roster. That's the one. So I guess things to look forward to for the next couple of days. Does Raymond Johnson get claimed? I think he
Mhm.
will. It sounds like you think he will. Do the
Yeah.
Bengals add anybody off waivers? And we think quarterback, maybe running back, tight end could be those positions. And then what happens with Joseph Osai? I think that's the only other kind of
Yeah.
outstanding question is, do they have to put him on IR? And I wonder if he goes on IR, what they would do. Would they bring back like Jeff Gunter maybe? Would they bring Dominique Davis, or maybe go to add someone in a different position? I don't know. I don't know what they would do if they put Osai onto IR and create that roster spot. We'll just have to see what direction they go in. But I think those are the most kind of pressing questions over the next few days.
Yeah, if Osai does go on IR, it'll depend on what they do, whether they get anybody on waivers. I
Yeah,
mean, let's not forget they're number 29 on the waiver
sure.
wire, so it's going to have to be somebody that 20 other teams passed on
Yeah,
for them to claim them. So that Osai, if he goes on IR and they don't claim anybody off of waivers, then I do think Jeff Gunter would be the guy. He played really well in the preseason. He's a 7th round pick, but they like what they've seen. They like his future. I fully expect him to be back on the practice squad. And as well as Dominique Davis played, then you're talking about 4
right.
nose tackles.
Right.
That's just too much.
Probably too
So
much. Yeah,
yeah, I think Gunter would be the guy if Osai does go on IR, if
yeah.
there's no corresponding move that has to be made.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I do have to say, one trade I wish the Bengals would have made. I don't even know how to say his last name, but Broncos tight end Albert O. He got traded to the Philadelphia Eagles today
What a great move.
in a swap of late round picks. I wish the Bengals would do something like this once in a while. Just send a 2025 6th, get back a 2025 7th, and get a young, talented player at a position of need. Because the Eagles are even farther down the waiver wire than
Yeah,
the
they're
Bengals
31.
are. They weren't going to get Alberto on
No.
waivers, so they made this deal. And it's hard to complain about the Bengals roster given the state it's in and where the Bengals are, but that's the one thing I wish they'd be a little more proactive on kind of moves around the margins like that. I think they could have really used another receiving tight end on their roster, and I hope we've seen the Bengals change their stripes in so many ways over the past few years, and I'm hoping that's like the last barrier that they can kind of get over is how do we find these more creative ways of player and talent acquisition that we can kind of invest in. We'll see if the Bengals make any trades this year. I'm hoping they do.
They've always valued those draft picks and they don't like to give them up. And now, especially seeing the train coming down the tracks, that is the Joe Burrow contract. And,
Sure.
and you're going to have these draft picks and get these guys and develop. And I agree with you. I think that would have been a great move, but I know where they're coming from with that is they're going to try to keep as many draft picks as possible moving forward, because these salaries are just getting bigger every single year, and Jamar Chase is another train coming down the tracks next year.
That's exactly right. And that's something we'll talk about over the next couple of weeks. Does Joe Burrow get an extension before week 1? Does T. Higgins get an extension before week 1? We're coming right up on it. I thought they would have had a deal for Burrow in place at least by now. That hasn't come to fruition. We'll see if it gets done before week 1. But that's obviously something that we'll have to be looking forward to in the next couple of weeks. Jay, anything else on the roster that stood out to you? Like I said, I don't think there were a ton of surprises. A couple things to watch for in the next couple days, but for the most part, I think this is pretty much where we thought the Bengals roster would be on Cutdown Day.
You know what I want to trade? I want to trade our time slot back. I want to go back to mornings. This late afternoon, the sun's coming in. It's in my face. We have shears up, but I don't have just like blinds I can draw. So yeah, I'm like move back and get it out of my face.
Yeah.
We'll be back at our normal morning time next week.
We will. It's a little early for me, but it's it's fine. Central time zone and all. It's okay. Yeah, great discussion today, Jay. Thank you everyone for listening to the PFN Bengals podcast. Whatever platform you're on, make sure to give us a review and subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. We will be back next week, as Jay said, at our usual time. I think we'll be talking a little betting next week, a little Bengals betting preview for the season. That's it for today.
Hold it against us.
No, please don't. That's it for today. We'll be back next week. Thank you all again.